There's a point in everyone's journey when the dynamic between parents and their children begins to change. For decades, you were their guide, their provider, their biggest supporter. But then, a subtle shift occurs. You might notice your advice is overlooked, your viewpoints are brushed aside, or your words are met with a condescending tone. Worst of all, you might be made to feel like you're in the way. And that stings. If you've started to feel that your children aren't giving you the consideration you've earned, it's natural to feel a mix of frustration and even a bit of anger. Your first impulse might be to recount all the sacrifices you've made, the countless times you put their needs first. But let me share a crucial insight. Reacting with anger won't solve the problem. In many cases, it can actually create more distance. There is, however, a far more powerful and peaceful way to restore that sense of honor in your relationship, without arguments, without fights, and without building resentment. Today, I'm going to walk you through 6 key adjustments you can make when you feel a lack of respect from your children. These are potent, yet simple, changes in your response that can fundamentally reshape how they perceive you. Some of these may seem counterintuitive, but if you stick with me until the end, you'll have a roadmap to reclaim your position as a cherished and influential person in their lives. Let's begin. Action 1. Cease seeking their validation. One of the most common pitfalls for parents, especially as the years go by, is to work too hard for their children's approval. Perhaps you see this in your own actions. You bend over backward to fit their schedules, you agree to things when you'd rather not, or you consistently place their wants before your own well-being, all in the hope of being valued more. But here's a difficult truth. The more you chase their validation, the less they tend to respect you. True respect doesn't come from endless sacrifice. It's a byproduct of self-respect. When you are always the one to give in, to compromise, to maintain harmony at your own expense, you are unintentionally teaching them that your own feelings are secondary. Once that idea takes root, it becomes easy for them to overlook your needs. Think of a woman named Margaret. In her prime, she was decisive and self-reliant. But as she got older, she began to cede all decision-making to her children. She would rearrange her entire day for their convenience, swallow her own opinions, and overlook it when they spoke to her dismissively. "I'm just trying to hold the family together," she'd say. But what was the outcome? Her children began to devalue her. They saw her as someone who would always bend, always consent, and always remain quiet. She believed she was preserving peace, but in reality, she was losing her own voice. If you feel disrespected by your children, the initial move isn't to demand their esteem. It's to stop behaving as if their approval is something you require. Establish your limits. Say no when it's necessary. Voice your thoughts even if it might cause a ripple. The instant you begin to honor yourself, they will start to see you in a new light. And eventually, that respect will find its way back to you. Action 2. Don't debate. Lead through your actions. When your children disregard your insights, speak over you, or treat you without the courtesy you deserve, your gut reaction may be to confront them, to prove your worth, or to insist that they listen. But allow me to offer you a piece of wisdom that can spare you years of frustration. Arguing is a futile effort. Consider this: when has a heated exchange ever genuinely earned you someone's respect? Respect is not won with words. It is earned through your presence, through the way you conduct yourself, and how you react when your patience is tested. If you counter disrespect with anger, you are only validating their perception that they hold power over your emotions. I recall a man named Frank, a retired educator who had commanded his classroom with quiet authority. At home, however, his grown children had begun to treat him as if he were invisible. They ignored his guidance, dismissed his worries, and occasionally even scoffed when he offered a correction. Initially, he would argue, attempting to assert his continued relevance. But the more he pushed, the more strained things became. Then, Frank shifted his strategy. Instead of engaging in disputes, he began to listen with intention. He stopped trying to win respect with speeches and instead behaved like a man who was already secure in it. He spoke with a calm, measured wisdom, free from the need to be right. Gradually, his children began to take note. They saw a man who wasn't desperate for their endorsement, who had no need to prove his value. He simply embodied strength. If your children are not showing you respect, do not enter the ring to fight for it. Instead, demonstrate what respect looks like through your own conduct. Maintain your dignity, speak with assurance, and, most importantly, never descend to their level of contention. When you stand your ground with grace, they will feel the shift. And in time, they will follow your example. If you're finding this video helpful, please type the number 2 in the comments below to let me know you're with me. And if you haven't already, I encourage you to subscribe and click the notification bell so you won't miss our future videos. Your engagement helps us create more content to inform and uplift you. Now let's continue. Action 3. Reclaim your emotional independence. One of the most challenging lessons as we mature is recognizing that our children cannot be our sole source of emotional fulfillment. You love them dearly, and you naturally desire their love and respect in return. However, the moment they perceive that you need them to feel whole, the balance of power in the relationship tilts. The reality is, people, including your own family, have a natural respect for those who are emotionally self-sufficient. When you lean on them for your sense of worth, for affection, or for constant connection, it can feel like a heavy weight on their shoulders. Instead of feeling appreciative, they may begin to feel burdened. This can cause them to withdraw, to become impatient, or even to seem irritated. And the more you pursue their affection, the less freely it is given. Consider a woman named Helen, a devoted mother who had poured her entire being into her children. As they grew up and became immersed in their own lives, she found herself waiting by the telephone, hoping for a call. When it didn't come, she would call them, perhaps more frequently than they liked. She would express how much she missed them and wished for more visits. But this had the opposite effect. It pushed them further away. Her calls started to feel like a duty rather than a welcome conversation. Then, Helen decided to try something new. She stopped waiting. She stopped initiating every call. Instead, she began to invest in herself. She picked up old hobbies, made plans with friends, and took charge of her own happiness. And a remarkable thing happened. Her children started calling her more often. They respected her time and saw her as a person with a vibrant, independent life. The lesson here is straightforward. The less you rely on your children to feel significant, the more they will value your presence. When you demonstrate that you are strong and complete on your own, they will begin to respect you not from a sense of duty, but from genuine admiration for the life you lead. Action 4. Establish boundaries and uphold them. A primary reason children's respect for their parents can erode is simply because parents allow it to. If you permit your children to speak to you rudely, to disregard your feelings, or to act as if your time is unimportant, they will continue to do so. This isn't necessarily because they are unkind, but because people, especially those closest to us, will treat us in the manner we accept. Setting boundaries isn't about cutting off your children or instigating conflict. It is about calmly and clearly defining what treatment you will and will not tolerate. And, crucially, it means taking action when those lines are crossed. I remember a gentleman named Robert, a retired executive who had managed his company with clear expectations. Yet, with his adult children, he found it difficult to do the same. They would interrupt him, belittle his worries, and even pass judgment on his lifestyle. For a while, he let it slide, telling himself it wasn't worth the argument. But he came to see that with every silent acceptance, he was reinforcing their disrespectful behavior. So one day, Robert changed his approach. When his son cut him off mid-sentence, he calmly said, "I will continue when you are ready to listen." When his daughter brushed off his opinion, he replied simply, "You don't have to share my view, but I do expect you to be courteous." And when they tested his limits further, he made it known that if they couldn't treat him with basic decency, he would choose not to spend time with them. And what was the result? They began to listen. There was some initial pushback, but they soon understood that their father was serious. They saw that he valued himself enough to require respect, and because of that, they began to offer it. If you feel you're not getting the respect you deserve from your children, it's time for an honest question. Are you permitting it? Because if you don't establish boundaries, they won't. And if you don't stand up for yourself, no one else will. If you're still with me and finding value in this, please comment with the number 4 below. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing and enabling notifications. Your support is what allows us to keep making helpful content like this. Let's move on to our next point. Action 5. Stop giving where there is no gratitude. One of the surest ways to be taken for granted is to continue giving to those who show no appreciation. As parents, this is a pattern we can easily fall into. We offer our time, our energy, and our resources, even when it goes unnoticed, even when it's met with a sense of entitlement. But the hard truth is this: when you give to someone who is unappreciative, you are not fostering love or respect. You are fostering expectation. Your kindness ceases to be seen as a precious gift and instead becomes something they feel they are owed. And on the day you can no longer give, they don't feel thankful for what they received. They feel annoyed by the inconvenience. Think of a father named George, who had always been incredibly generous with his children. He would help them out financially at a moment's notice, drop everything to lend a hand, and rearrange his own life to suit their needs. But in return, he received complaints instead of thanks. They didn't express gratitude. They simply expected more. The most painful part was when he finally needed their help, they were nowhere to be found. Then George decided to make a change. He stopped stretching himself so thin. He stopped volunteering his help before it was requested. And most importantly, he began to say no when necessary. At first, his children were baffled and frustrated. They couldn't understand why he was no longer at their beck and call. But over time, a shift occurred. They began to value his time. They started to appreciate his assistance because they finally understood that his generosity was not endless. It was a choice, not an obligation. If you feel that your time, effort, or kindness is not respected by your children, take a moment to reflect. Are you giving more than you should? So, what might change if you paused? When you teach people that your generosity is linked to being respected, they will start to treat it, and you, accordingly. Action 6. Cultivate a life beyond them. One of the most effective ways to regain your children's respect is to show them that your happiness is not dependent on them. As parents, it's our nature to pour ourselves into our children, to make them the focal point of our world. But as we age, that relationship must evolve. If you have spent your whole life with them at the center, they may begin to view you as someone whose life lacks its own substance. People are naturally drawn to and respect those who have their own sense of purpose, their own passions, and their own sources of joy. If your children sense that you are relying on them for your entertainment, validation, or sense of meaning, they may start to feel suffocated. Or worse, they may see you as someone who is simply waiting for them to provide a spark in your life. I knew a woman named Eleanor, a widow in her late 70s. After her husband passed away, she invested all her energy into her children's lives. She would check in constantly, offer unsolicited advice, and expect them to fill the void her husband had left. But this didn't bring them closer. It created distance. They visited less frequently. Their phone calls grew shorter, and Eleanor felt more isolated than ever. Then she made a conscious decision. She joined a local book club. She started taking short trips with friends. She began volunteering at a community center. She stopped making her children the epicenter of her universe. And a wonderful thing happened. Her children started reaching out more. They were intrigued by her new activities. They admired her newfound independence. They respected her. If you feel disrespected by your children, ask yourself this. Do they see a person with a rich, meaningful life? Or do they see someone who is waiting for them to call? When you show them that you are truly living, not just passing the time, they will begin to see you in an entirely new and respectful way. Final thoughts. Respect is not something you can demand from your children. It's something you inspire through your actions, your boundaries, and the richness of your own life. If you feel they have begun to treat you with less consideration or care, don't exhaust yourself with anger. Instead, adjust your approach. Stop chasing their approval. The less you appear to need it, the more freely they will offer it. Led by your example, your quiet dignity is more powerful than any argument. Reclaim your emotional independence. Your self-sufficiency will earn their admiration. Set clear boundaries. People will only treat you as well as you require them to. Cease giving without appreciation. When your generosity is valued, it becomes meaningful. And most importantly, build a fulfilling life for yourself. People respect those who have their own purpose and joy. When you do these things, something remarkable will happen. Your children will start to see you differently, not as someone waiting for their attention, but as a person who commands respect simply by being who you are. And in time, that respect will return, not because you insisted on it, but because you truly earned it. Thank you for joining us today. We would be delighted to hear from you. Please leave a comment below and share one takeaway from this video that you plan to apply in your own life. Your insights are valuable to us, so please don't hesitate to share. Reading your comments provides us with great motivation. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a like, subscribe to our channel, and share it with others. Your support enables us to continue creating positive and informative content. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.